This is not enough, but this is what we can afford as of this time. And to make sure that our finances going forward, and especially for the next administration, are still going to be healthy, if we suspend the fuel excise taxes under train, it will reduce the total government revenue by 105.9 billion pesos in 2022. If we will continue to spend the same amount of money, we will have to borrow more money.
Finance Secretary Carlos Dominguez was referring to a 200 peso subsidy that government has decided to hand out monthly. This will aid some 12 million of the poorest of the poor as pump prices continue to soar. Government has opted for this instead of suspending the excise taxes on fuel.
The finance chief argues that doing so would only benefit the rich, who consumes 50% of the country's fuel. They also noted that some reprieve might take place next week as the country expects a rollback next week. Time for today's biggest headlines. I'm Gretchen Ho.
I'm Robbie Alampa. You're watching The Big Story. We begin tonight with the President choosing to side with the Finance Department and deciding not to suspend excise taxes on fuel.
Instead, he gave the go signal for a monthly 200 peso cash aid for the country's poorest ahead of a possible rollback in pump prices next week. Mobile journalist Pamela Vasquez with The Big Story.
Despite 11 straight weeks of oil price hikes, President Duterte has decided not to suspend fuel excise taxes. The Energy Department had been pushing for it for several weeks to help cushion the impact of skyrocketing pump prices. But Duterte chose to side with Finance Secretary Sonny Dominguez, whom he listens to on matters of the economy. Dominguez had been warning about the impact on social programs if the government lost more revenue.
If we suspend the fuel excise taxes under train, it will reduce the total government revenue by 105.9 billion pesos in 2022. If we will continue to spend the same amount of money, we will have to borrow more money.
Dominguez also argued that cutting the tax will only benefit the rich.
We have analyzed it and we know that the top 10% of income earners in the Philippines consume almost 50% of all the fuel. If we look at the bottom 50% of the Philippines, they only consume 13% of the fuel.
Instead, the DOF wants to focus on distributing targeted subsidies. Duterte has also approved the DOF's recommendation to approve ayuda of 200 pesos per month for 1 year to the bottom 12 million households.
This is not enough, but this is what we can afford as of this time to make sure that our finances going forward.
There may be some relief in sight. Global prices of crude have fallen sharply overnight. Energy Secretary Alfonso Cusi said that means we may see a rollback in local prices next week.
Sa gasolina, pwede po tayong bumaba ng mga 5 pesos pahigit at sa diesel po, pwede naman pong magbaba ng 12 peso pataas.
But transport groups nationwide vow to continue holding protest strikes this week. Mobile journalist Pamela Vasquez, We Are One News.
Will the worst of the fuel hike soon be behind us? That big question and more with Energy Undersecretary Gerardo Erquiza Jr. Good evening, Yusek Erquiza. Welcome again to The Big Story.
Good evening, Robbie. Good evening, Gretchen, and to everybody who are listening or watching tonight.
Yusek, first of all, kanina sinabi ni Secretary Cusi, we're expecting a rollback next week, 5 to 12 pesos ang projection. First of all, how can we make that kind of a projection? What's the basis for an expected rollback?
Well, again, that's our legal framework. Just what we told before. We know that prices are going up because of the increase in world market price. And in the recent days, Monday and Tuesday, it has been indicated in the world market that it is going down. And from that benchmark price last week, which is around 120 plus, the trading. Now it went down as low as 104 last Monday, and it's still going down. So by all indication, if it goes down, then we get the average for that week. That will be subtracted from mathematically from the previous price, and definitely it will be going down. So it's now Wednesday, and we hope that it will continue to go down by Thursday and Friday. The average of that would definitely be lower, and we will have definitely next week a lower price in the cost of oil products.
Okay, but that's for next week. Does that necessarily mean that the worst is over, or is this a temporary retreat?
Well, we hope that the worst is over, but we know as one indicator is that the Russia-Ukraine conflict is almost solved. They are in the process of getting or settling the differences, whatever is that. And immediately when those announcements came out, then the price went down. So that's an indicator. And hopefully, with the continuous assurance of the OPEC to push through with its commitment of 400,000 barrels a day, then that will definitely ease the supply or production.
Okay, now in the meantime, Yusek Erguiza, President Duterte has spoken. He's siding with the DOF, saying he does not want to lift excise taxes on fuel. 200 peso per month subsidy na lang. Your take on this?
Yeah, we went through a process. Of course, the DOE pushed for that suspension of the excise tax, and the Department of Finance said it's not practicable. And everybody went to the drawing table. And of course, the Department of Finance has the expertise, they take care of the country's resources and see to it that the government would be running on good conditions. And ang sabi nga ni Secretary Dominguez, it will also benefit the rich pag sinuspend mo yan kasi sa kakaramihan sila ang bumibili ng oil products natin. And definitely, sila ang magbe-benefit dyan kasi yung sector. So, ang sector dito na titignan talaga yung socio-economic sector na magbe-benefit dito, and the proposal or decision na talagang direction natin is to provide the ayuda sa mga tao, because at least ito, the money will go back to the people, then iikot ang ekonomiya natin. So that will help ease or improve our economy.
Okay, Undersecretary Erguiza, maraming salamat po. Energy Undersecretary Gerardo Erguiza Jr. We may be in for a reprieve next week with a possible rollback in pump prices, but the Energy Department is raising the alarm over something else: power rates. Gretch, one problem after another. Should we be bracing for higher electricity rates?
Unfortunately, Robbie, that might just be the case come the second quarter. Energy Secretary Alfonso Cusi made that warning as more European countries look for alternatives to fuel due to the ongoing war in Ukraine. As a result, coal prices are expected to exceed $500 per ton this year. Cusi says the country's coal inventory is enough to last us 30 days, and the increase in power rates will be felt by May.
Dahil sa pagtaas ng presyo ng coal, tumataas po ang presyo ng ating kuryente ngayon, at ito ay mararamdaman ng ating mga mamamayan, ng ating mga consumers by May. Again, dito naman po sa supply ng coal sa ating bansa, sufisyente po, 30 days na inventaryo po ang minemaintain natin.
These are the other big stories tonight. Vice President Leni Robredo's camp is still not letting go of a possible unity talk with other opposition bets. She heads to Mindanao, where she returns to her 2016 bailiwick in the Bangsamoro region. Unspeakable acts, outrage from the Consul General in New York after yet another elderly Pinay was brutally punched and kicked by an unnamed assailant. And Alaska Aces gets a new lease on life after beating NLEX at the start of the 2021 PBA Governors Cup quarterfinals. These big stories after the break.
still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. Vice President Leni Robredo heads south to Mindanao to visit the provinces that gave her a landslide victory in the 2016 elections.
Does Robredo still have the support of voters from the BARRM? Let's get more details on this. We have with us mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro, who's reporting live from Cotabato City. Jacob, kamusta dyan?
Hi, Robbie. Hi, Gretchen. Earlier today, Vice President Leni Robredo conducted a people's rally in the Cotabato State University, where thousands of supporters endured heat of the sun just to get a glimpse of the presidential bet. She also met with several local officials, and right now she's in Isabela, Basilan for a grand rally. Back in 2016, Robredo won by a landslide here in Barm, but traveling into the rural parts, it was noticeable that almost all of the campaign materials were in support of the unity. But when it came to the urban parts of the region, there were more campaign materials for the vice president. Nonetheless, Robredo promised that Mindanao will be a priority under her administration, saying that she will prioritize the peace and order situation in the entire region. Let's listen to what Robredo had to say.
Ako po naging Pangulo, kung ano yung sinimulan kong pagpapakita ng pagmamahal at pag-aasikaso sa inyo, sisiguraduhin po natin na pinapakinggan kayo, walang naiiwan, lahat natutulungan, lalo na sa kinabuhayan.
Robbie, Robredo also maintained that the insurgency cannot be resolved with purely a military solution, adding that it can only be eradicated if the core issues are addressed.
Jacob, who's the latest to give their support for VP Leni?
Gretchen, several officials made their endorsement for Robredo during her visit in Mindanao. Robredo was endorsed by incumbent Basilan Congressman Mujib Hataman. He believes in what he describes on Robredo's on-the-ground and transparent government. Akma PFP party list first nominee Datu Abbas Kida likewise endorsed Robredo and agreed that given the bloody history of the Moro people under martial law, the presidential race in Barm will most likely come down to either Robredo or Manila Mayor Isko Moreno. Gretchen, according to the Bangsamoro Interior Minister Nagib Sinarimbo, the Barm government has a timetable on when they will endorse a candidate. But that will depend on when other candidates can visit the region, so they can have an equal chance to present their platforms. So far, only Moreno and Robredo has met with the leaders of the Barm government. The vice president will finish her Mindanao leg this week after visiting Basilan, Zamboanga del Norte, and Zamboanga del Sur.
Jacob, let's zoom out a bit from where you are and focus on the actual campaign of Leni Robredo. Even though we're just less than 2 months away from the elections, are there still talks? Are there still chances of unity? Is unity talks still something on the agenda of the Vice President?
Robbie, yes, that's right. VP Robredo is still open to unification among other parties. Senator Ping Lacson recently claimed that a mediator from the Robredo camp negotiated with him regarding a possible unification against Marcos Jr. But according to Attorney Barry Gutierrez, the Robredo camp has not officially sent any mediators to other candidates. Attorney Gutierrez, however, did not deny that there are other groups and individuals that have been working on some form of unification. Robbie, along with this, Attorney Gutierrez said that Robredo has always maintained an open door to unification for these conversations for unification. Robbie, Gretchen.
Thank you for those updates. Jacob, that was mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro reporting live from Cotabato City.
Robredo still has a long way to go, well, as far as survey numbers are concerned.
But while Pulse Asia says it's not completely impossible to catch up with Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s numbers, it's going to be a tough task. Marian Enriquez with this report.
With a 45 percentage point gap between Ferdinand Marcos Jr. and Vice President Leni Robredo in the latest Pulse Asia survey, is it going to be a sure win for Marcos Jr.? Not exactly, says Pulse Asia, but the survey firm says catching up may be an uphill climb.
Hindi naman imposible, pero mahirap po. Kasi po, nung tumatakbo po siya sa pagka-vice presidente, hindi po ganun kalaki yung agwat. Noong 2016.
Dr. Ana Tabunda put things in perspective during her interview on 1PH sa Totoo Lang. Tabunda cited the tight race between late former President Noynoy Aquino and former Senator Manny Villar in the 2010 elections. She said that in January 2010, Aquino and Villar were statistically tied with 37% and 35% respectively. But immediately after a month, Aquino was able to lead the survey by 7 percentage points. This is something that Robredo has yet to achieve 2 months before the May polls. Meanwhile, Tabunda said that Marcos Jr.'s resources and connections might have an influence on his early lead.
Malaking bagay po yung maraming resources si Senator Bongbong Marcos. Kaya niya mag-political ads, kaya niya yung mga kanyang caravan, nakakatulong sa kanya yung kanyang koneksyon sa kanyang ama dahil mukhang maraming Pilipino ngayon ay maganda ang pagtingin sa nagawa ng kanyang ama.
Pulse Asia, however, admits that they were not able to survey those from classes A to B.
Mahirap po kasi kukunti lang sila, gated subdivisions pa sila, baka kung nasample man sila, nag-refuse pa magpa-interview.
On the mind conditioning accusations, on the other hand, Tabunda said that they are only doing the polls to serve as a source of information for the voters. She added that only 1% said that surveys influence them on who to vote for, while 86% still rely on media. For News 5, Marian Enriquez, we are One News.
For the big story in sports, the Alaska Aces live to fight another day after dragging the NLEX Road Warriors to a do-or-die duel with a 93-79 win in the quarterfinals. Facing a twice-to-beat disadvantage, the Aces erased a 16-point deficit and held off the Road Warriors in the second half behind a balanced attack to stay alive in their final PBA conference. Debuting import Mark St. Fort held his own with a double-double of 17 points and 14 rebounds. Alaska will now look to complete the upset when they face NLEX again on Saturday. Time for another quick break. When we return, 6,500 peso fuel subsidy begins its rollout today, but so far, only a quarter of the jeepney drivers received the cash assistance. And an elderly Filipina living in New York was rushed to the hospital after being hit more than 100 times by an unknown assailant. The details after the break.
watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. Thousands of PUV drivers have yet to receive their fuel subsidies under the Pantawid Pasada program.
But for those who got their payout, they doubt the dole-out will even last a week. Camille Samonte has this report.
Thousands of public transportation drivers can get to wait their hands on the government's 6,500 peso fuel subsidy. Payout started on Tuesday, but the likes of Chris have yet to receive anything on his Pantawid Pasada card.
Wala talaga, di na namin inaasahan po yun kasi noong nakaraan, di rin ako nakatanggap, di na kami babiyahe po, wala nang kikitain talaga, wala nang iuwi sa bahay, sa pamilya.
Some drivers, meanwhile, complain that this aid won't even last them a week.
Hindi pa talagang sapat po, ma'am. Kasi sa sobrang krudo nga, magkano lang 1 litro. Araw-araw kami bumabiyahe. Kulang talaga.
Some drivers also have yet to apply for their cards.
Pinababalik ako by Monday, ma'am, para i-process. Dadaling ko yung mga papers ko.
According to the LTFRB, some 35,000 drivers have already received their subsidy. These out of the 136,000 initial card holders yet to claim their share. Director Cristina Casion says they are expecting the Land Bank to complete the distribution by Friday. For News 5, Camille Samonte, We Are One News.
In world news, another Filipina has fallen victim to Asian hate crime in New York. A 67-year-old Pinay was hit by the assailant more than 100 times. Los Baños has the story.
This 67-year-old Filipina was about to enter her apartment in New York when a man appeared from behind and punched her. The woman was knocked down, but the man went on striking her over 100 times. The old lady tried to shield herself from the blows, but couldn't even lift an arm. The man even spat on her and shouted a racial slur before leaving like nothing happened. Thanks to the CCTV footage, New York police easily apprehended the suspect, 47-year-old Tamel Esco. Esco was charged with counts of attempted murder and assault as a hate crime. The recovering woman, identified as Filipina by the Philippine Consulate in New York, suffered multiple contusions, brain bleeding, and facial bone fractures. Consul General Elmer Cato was quick to denounce the incident as an unspeakable act. Cato said this is the third time a Filipino became a victim of Asian hate crime in the city. Reporting for News 5, Los Baños, We Are One News.
Para sa mga uhaw sa pagbabago, drinks inspired by the presidential candidates are now the latest craze to usher in the dry season.
A milk tea shop in Quezon came up with new flavors for their milk tea, which will not only quench your thirst, but will also throw your support for a candidate. If you are feeling tropical, there's Lenny's Robredo and Peach Lacson. If you're looking for something new, well, there's Manny Macchiato. But if you want to go to the traditional route, have some Puto Bongbong. And if you still can't make up your mind, your second choice can be is cookies and cream.
Owner Luis Santos said they got the idea from a popular convenience store. Santos also believes that the election-themed cups are very timely this season.
Naisipan namin makisabay kasi campaign period, di ba? Gusto rin natin malaman kung ano pulso ng taong bayan. Lalo ngayon, panahon ng napakainit ng panahon ngayon, talagang dito mo malalaman kung sino talaga yung uhaw sa pagbabago.
Kung ikaw botante, hindi mo alam saan lalagay mo yung pera mo, sa sa gas ba o dito sa mga pinaglalaban mo sa buhay?
Hindi natin alam, 200 pesos a month.
Pang na yung milk tea. Hindi, pero sige.
2 litro siguro ng gasolina, pwede pa.
Oo nga eh. Pero sabi ko nga itong mga survey na to, dapat may qualifier yan eh. Para lang sa mga may pera. Diba? Sa may mga natitira doon, sa 200 pesos na yun.
Oo nga. Ibang, parang baliktad na vote buying yan.
Pero certain naman ako doon sa isang bagay.
Ano?
Uhaw ako sa pagbabago.
Yan. Ako rin.
That wraps up today's big story. Catch us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Signal, Channels 8 and 250.
Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, you can visit our webpage, onenews.ph. Mask on.
Wash hands.
And stay safe, Philippines. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. We are One News. Have a good evening.